Good morning, frothers, and welcome back to another brew day at Wheatlow Brewery. And we've got another different beer for you today. And we've all got half an eye on the fact that there's the Football World Cup coming up. And when is there a better time to have a go at a Mexican lager? So the one I'm going to brew today is a recipe I've had from the Malt Miller. The kit's available on their website in the UK. And this recipe has been developed by Mark at the Malt Miller. And it's called a Juanito the Bandito. And it's a Mexican lager of about 4.5%, pale, refreshing, and using Hallertau Blanc. So we know that a Mexican lager should be pretty pale, it should be dry and crisp, it should be refreshing, it's not really too bitter or hoppy, in the sort of low to mid 20s IBUs. So it makes for a very refreshing and drinkable drink, ideal for swilling in whilst we watch the disappointment that is no doubt coming our way as we watch England in another World Cup. If you fancy doing a Mexican lager and supporting your team whilst sipping on that in the World Cup, then now's the time to do it, of course, so that it can be ready in time. Now then, this beer we're using best Heidelberg malt. Heidelberg malt is quite pale, paler than a Pilsner malt, and it'll also give us quite a light touch with the beer, not just in colour, but in terms of not having the same honey qualities, for example, that a German Pilsner malt might have. So we don't want to overdo that sort of honey sweetness. We want it to be quite light and drinkable. So Heidelberg malt is the majority at 75%, and then we've got 10% best Vienna malt. That will just add a little bit of biscuitiness, bread crustiness, that kind of thing, a little bit of colour as well, tiny bit, and add a little bit of something to the beer so it's not too thin. Mexican lagers still use Vienna malt in them, and the reason for this is the history of the style, which was caused by German and Austrian brewers coming over in the 1800s, particularly around the time of 1860, when Austrian brewers in particular would like to use Vienna malts. So actually the most traditional Mexican lagers are amber lagers, a bit like Vienna lagers, and there's still a few of those about today. But of course, over the years, the beer was adapted to suit the hot climate and the local agriculture as well. So maize, very plentiful, very cheap, available. We've got 10% torrefied maize as well. It's fairly usual, fairly typical to find maize in a Mexican lager because the history of it and the hot sunshine. They wanted a lighter beer, a more crisp, refreshing beer, less robust and more soft and approachable, easy to drink in that kind of weather. So adding maize helps to lighten the beer. It makes it more refreshing, more sunshiny, that kind of thing. Maize is an important characteristic of Mexican lager, and Vienna malt is something that is commonly found in Mexican lager as well. So we've also got a little bit of dextrin malt from Simpson's at 5%, and that will just help to boost the mouthfeel up a little bit and hopefully head retention as well. As will a step mash, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. For the water profile on this beer, we're going to go with a reasonably light touch, almost balanced, but just favouring chlorides a little bit, because we don't want the hops to have any harshness to them at all. We want them to be quite soft, quite in the background. It just wants to be balanced, drinkable beer. So it's come out at calcium 46, magnesium 12, sodium 5, sulfates 48, chloride 60. There's a bit of bicarbon of about 24 parts per million as well. So we're going to mash pH at 5.2, and then for about 24 IBUs. So we've got 18.6 IBUs of Hallertau Blanc at the start of the boil, and then 5.6 at the end of the boil at last 5 minutes. Fermentation of this beer, you want good attenuation, you want it dry, you want it crisp, You want it very clean as well, how it ferments. You don't want any fruity esters, you don't want any sulphur, you don't want any diacetyl, anything like that. I've managed to buy some of the new yeast from WHC, which is called Cerveza Campeón. And this is specifically, they're claiming it is a lager strain, and it says here, delivers crisp fermentation, subtle malt sweetness, gentle citrus notes, and exceptional clarity. Perfect for bright, refreshing lagers with clean finishes, smooth drinkability, and dependable performance in every batch. So it'd be interesting to give that a try. We did try a Mexican lager that had been brewed with this yeast at BeerX, the UK independent brewery trade show, and on the Malt Miller stand, and that was absolutely delicious. So hopefully this one will be too. So we're going to mash in now, get this show on the road, and then I'll talk a little bit about the step mash. Stick with us whilst we make the beer, package the beer, and drink the beer. The froth's coming at the end, frothers. First stage of the step mash that we're doing today. So I've mashed in with a strike temperature 53.6, I think it was, to achieve a mash initial rest, protein rest it's called, of 50 degrees. This will help break down some of the longer proteins and help to result in a clearer beer and possibly a crisper, cleaner beer as well. Then I'm about to step it up right now actually. I'm going to turn it up to 62. 62 is your beta amylase stage, and this is where we're going to do the bulk of the conversion in the mash at 62. And it's the 62, 63 is the optimum temperature for beta amylase, and beta amylase breaks down the sugars into fermentable sugars. So what we're going to do by having this stage is we're going to make the beer dry and a highly fermentable wort so that it becomes dry and crisp and refreshing and drinkable. Then after this, and this rest is for 40 minutes, and then after this we're going to step it up again to 71 degrees, which is your alpha amylase temperature, or where alpha amylase enzyme thrives the most, and the purpose of the alpha amylase, that'll break down some of the starches into longer chain sugars and dextrins and things like that, some of which are a bit unfermentable, and this will result in a bit more body in the beer. So the idea being you're getting it dry, crisp and clean by having the beta stage, but you're just balancing that a little bit by having the alpha amylase stage at the hotter temperature to produce some of that body and mouthfeel in the beer. And then finally we're going to mash out at 76-ish degrees. That stops the enzymes working, which is one thing, but the main thing is it reduces the viscosity of the wort and the dissolvability of the sugars, so it's easier to sparge and rinse out all the sugars from this wort into the kettle. So that is a step mash that we're doing today. Now I'm lucky that this is I think you call it a rims kind of a system, so the wort circulates through a tube with an element in it and then back through here. So it's relatively easy for me to do a step mash. However, I need to make sure of two things. One is that the flow rate is high enough, particularly at the low temperatures when it almost looks milky now if you look at it. It's got a lot of protein and stuff in it, and it will easily stick to the element and burn. So we need to keep the flow rate going, and I'm stirring it as well to make sure that it doesn't set too much at the bottom. Whilst I was talking on camera, I just got a hint of a burnt smell from the recirculation. Now, experience tells me that if I get that smell, I need to turn the element off immediately, and only if I catch it within a few seconds, literally, can I save the beer before it gets horrible taste in there. So I have done that, and the only way now I can step it up to the next temp is to effectively put some in my decoction pan and boil it and then stick it back in. So I've suddenly switched this to a decoction mash. But I'll just do it once. Once it's at 62, I think it'll heat up okay to the next stage. It's just when it's so white with the powdery flour in there that it catches on the element. So I'll spoon some over, jug some over. And this 20 kilowatt burner will make short work of it, I'm sure. My pan's come to the boil now, so I'm going to add it back in, but it's amazing to see the difference between the sort of milky colour of the cooler wort to the clearer, less milky colour of the saucepan. And the hops on this one are Hallertau Blanc. Now, Hallertau Blanc is a German variety, German grown, developed, I think, in Huel, and it's been developed as a sort of attempt to do a German New World hop style, if you like. So it's a little bit more bold than your traditional noble hops, and it's a bit more tropical as well. That you can smell on there. It's actually related to Cascade, a daughter of Cascade, I think. So it'd be really interesting to see. I've never used this hop before. I'm really interested to see how that turns out. Should be a bit more interesting than the Hallertau Mittelfrüh that I particularly use quite a lot of. Start the boil, I just want 100 grams. $100 grams going in. just checked the gravity, it's 1050. I want this to be 1047, I think. So I'm going to actually liquor it back this time because I've got a feeling that this beer is going to attenuate quite well. And the Malt Miller recipe actually says FG of 1012, but I think we're going to get a lot lower than that. I might be wrong. So I don't want it to be over 5%, not if it's for galloning up during the football. So I'm going to liquor it back to what it should be in the recipe, which is 1047. In fact, if it does attenuate really well, then it could go over 5% still, couldn't it, at that OG. So this is water straight from the HLT, so it's RO water, and it's 80 degrees. That was 5 litres, and that will just liquor it back to 1047. Right, so we said we wanted a clean fermentation, so I'm going to add some ALDC enzyme to stop diacetyl, and I want 2.6 grams, that's all. So I'm going to put that in the fermenter now before I forget. It's just transferring at the moment. Super. Oh, super. And it's transferring at about 17.5 degrees from the heat exchanger. But I've just managed to plug it in already to the cooling here, so that it's already started cooling. So the range for this yeast is said to be 10 to 14 centigrade. So we're going to ferment it in the middle of that range at 12 and see how we get on. I'm not sure what the effect of pressure fermentation on this yeast is, whether we could go hotter if we fermented it under pressure. But I think we'll go down the middle at 12. Right, I've got my yeast measured out, 133 grams, 1 gram a litre, and I'm going to stick that in now. Right, here is the Mexican lager, and it's got a bit of condensation on, but it is lovely and bright, and it's called Benito the Bandito, named after my friend and work colleague Ben, who we've inserted into the pump clip, but the rest of the recipe, as I said earlier, and the badge actually is the design of the Malt Miller. So check out their website if you want to order this as a ready-made all-grain kit. And I must say, I've put this on in the tap room at the right time, because we're just having a heat wave at the moment. It's 30 odd degrees today, red hot, and to have a nice cool crisp lager designed for hot weather, well, it's pretty perfect, isn't it? And it smells inviting. Got it in a heavy glass that I've cooled down in ice water to keep it cool as well. They say about the Hallertau Blanc hop that it has a little bit of winey qualities, and I can just smell a little bit of that on the aroma. Well, it's absolutely delicious. It's crisp, it's just the right amount of bitterness, it's easy to drink. The colour is a lovely pale golden colour, straw colour if you like, but not it's just not too pale, is it? It doesn't look insipid, it just looks exactly how it should do. Oh, and in this heat, so refreshing. Just perfect balance of the malt and the bitterness. Now, I gave this to someone the other day, and they said, oh, I can taste popcorn. And I thought, oh my goodness, I hope I haven't got diacetyl in there, but I knew I'd used ALDC. I was pretty confident that I didn't have diacetyl in there. And then I realised that what they can taste is actually the maize. And they did like the flavour, by the way. They like popcorn. And so they were saying, you know, they can taste it, reminds them of popcorn. And I think that's coming from the maize. The Hallertau Blanc, which is a relative of Cascade, by the way, developed in Germany in Huel, is it's a bit more interesting, I suppose, than the average noble hop. It's got a bit more of the American style to it, but very subtly so. I wouldn't say it was taking over the beer by any means. Really pleased with this beer. Ben has been up, by the way, and drank it. I was going to film him, but I forgot when he was drinking it. But never mind. He'll have to just make do with me today. But yeah, really pleased with this beer, and great that the heat waves come along when this beer is ready. It's going down fast. Even your most ardent real ale drinkers are dropping on it in this heat. But there is one problem, and remember I said I brewed this with the World Cup in mind. What I didn't realise when I did that is that the World Cup matches are on in the middle of the night. I mean, how are you supposed to watch a match at 2 till 4 in the morning? So if England progress to the later stages where I think they'll have some later matches, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to stay up till 4 in the morning drinking beer, however keen I am. 10 o'clock's a bit past my bedtime. But anyway, we're putting it into a good home on a daily basis, this beer, so very pleased with it. Glad that the Malt Miller shared this recipe. It's a really good test, of course, for the new WHC yeast. I'm pleased how that's performed. I've had no problems. It's about 4 weeks old, I think, now, and it's lovely and clear. I have used finings, and I transferred it from the fermenter into a bright tank. Let it settle for a bit, added finings, a little bit of finings, Super F in the bright tank, but then put a squirt in the kegs as well so that it was lovely and clear. And carbonation's just right. It's not actually too fizzy. Perhaps that's, I haven't just checked what the carbonation standard should be for a Mexican lager. Probably higher than this, I would have thought, but a lot of people have said the carbonation's just right. It's not too fizzy, which again helps with the drinkability. And as you know, frothers, it's all about drinkability here at Wheatlow Brewery, and getting it in copious amounts because it's so delicious. So this definitely fits into that category. And just a bit of a shorter video today because we've had a lot of long ones recently. And don't forget to give us a like, subscribe, leave us a comment, tell us if you've done a Mexican lager, what you thought of it, what you think of the style. Have you tried any of the more traditional ones, which would be a bit darker, using more Vienna malt and that sort of thing? So yeah, let us know in the comments, and until next time, we'll see you for another frothing ale. Cheers. So refreshing.